Thank you very much. Now, there's a slight change in the schedule. We are going to hear from Douglas Fajardo after lunch, but right now we're going to bring forward the presentation from Ritchie Djamhur, who is the Head of Learning and Culture at Bingley Electronics, and he will be talking to us about virtual reality and the applications that it can have in learning and the workplace. And his presentation is entitled, "On the Virtual Brink, Is Virtual Reality About to Go Mainstream?" Please welcome Ritchie.
Thanks. Yes, and if you need a new TV, I'm the guy to see. Yeah, definitely. So this is the fun segment today. I've got all these. Hands up, who has used one of these before? Probably a few of you. Look, I'm going to hand them out because while we do this, I preloaded some content just to have a look. Okay, this is the interactive part of the presentation. On my thanks, Pradeep, because on my actual card here it says radio talk show host. That's what Pradeep thinks I am. Now, if doing a show on 2GB at 3 a.m. on Saturday mornings, talking to insomniacs and shift workers about why they can't upgrade Windows 10 makes you a talk show host, then that's me. That's what I do. And I do that for fun. But I am the head of learning for...
And also, just to add that he's got a couple of million followers on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, not million, a few thousand. But thank you, Pradeep. Thank you. You're my new agent. So yeah, look, I am a head of. I'm in learning when it comes to retail. So all of this that we're talking about today is very interesting to me. But also I've got a tech side as well. So I do a lot of the internal performance management, coaching, performance, and I do our advertorials. And so I'm always in, kind of the bleeding edge of technology from a consumer point of view. So the Gear VR and virtual reality has been quite a big interest to me for quite a while. So when I was invited to talk about learning, it's kind of that nice, from a Venn diagram, that nice intersection between learning and new technology. So I thought I'd just go through with you some of the things that I've been finding out about virtual reality. I'm sure a lot of you here are starting to perhaps look at virtual reality as a component, as a supplement to what you're doing. But actually, I forgot my notes. But Gregory Pry had some great things to say about, particularly in schools. So I've got an 8 and 6-year-old, so they're right into all of the Minecraft and Pokemon and all the rest of it. And when we talk about engagement, the effect of student agency and them having control over their learning, virtual reality fits very nicely into that as well, because ultimately, from a virtual reality point of view, there is much more control over the way you're experiencing potentially that learning environment. So today, very quickly, I thought I'd go through. Oh, it's not going to work. Just press space bar, please. I'll just say space. There you go. All right, so today, we're just going to look at the difference between different platforms of enhanced reality. So VR is a bit of a buzzword right now, but I don't think from a learning perspective, it is just about virtual reality. It's actually about all the different ways of being able to perhaps enhance what we see and what we use it in order to be able to gain some kind of learning outcome. Look at the different ecosystems, and there's a broad array of ecosystems at the moment. One of the biggest issues, I think, is that at the moment VR and even mixed reality is not really platform agnostic, and hopefully that will be something that we move towards in the future. Look at content creation. I am a creator of some of that kind of VR content through 360-degree cameras, and I'll give you a bit of a demo of that when I'm finished here. And also, what are some of the consumption solutions? Because obviously one of the big issues right now is how do we help people experience VR? There's big computers that have got just amazing turbo boosted componentry, or you've got your little cardboard based vehicles that utilize the processors in smartphones. Let's look at some of the learning applications in education, but also in the workplace as well. And then let's really look far forward and see where potentially AI bots, which Sharon was talking about before, how they might be integrated as well. Because let's remember, Facebook are really invested in virtual reality, and they are also invested in bots. So you put those two together, what do you get? Well, let's see. It could be quite interesting. Space bar. Thank you. All right, so I thought I'd start with this, because again, being in the retail industry, since the dawn of man, since the beginning, we've always looked at pretty much a two-dimensional kind of platform to look at things. Now, we've got that frame there of the painting. We're still looking at these two-dimensional images here. For the first time now that we've got these new platforms, we can actually be way more immersed in the content. And I think being a captive audience can be of great benefit, especially from a learning point of view. So we've moved away from that now. Space. This is going to be awkward all the way through. I can see it now. So what I was saying, at the beginning when I was going to be prepared, was talking about virtual reality. It is a very personal experience. It still hasn't reached that. I know there's a lot of different, like Old Space and Social VR and all those kind of apps that are coming out right now, but it's still very personal, involved kind of platform to be part of. It's a mixture of rendered images, it's a mixture of video, but at the end of the day, what does it do for you? Space. It can be entertaining, it can be informative, it allows you to explore different environments, of course, but for us here today, we're talking about the educational component of it. I'm not sure if anyone else here has done this, but I've watched a 2-hour movie in a virtual cinema. It's pretty full on, and you don't feel the best coming out of it. And I think, yeah, I'm serious. I've had 200,000 people watch me watch a video on YouTube. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's one of my highest ranked videos. Crazy. But what it shows, of course, is that virtual reality right now, because of the kind of intense equipment that you need, is still very much a snack type of experience and hardware that you would need. Next slide, thanks. For those, again, that have been around since, we had Jetsons before, and this is like the holodeck of Star Trek Next Generation. That is kind of where we'd like to end up, where you yourself don't need to have any extra paraphernalia, you don't need extra hardware on you. You can literally walk into a new world. And I think everything that we're talking about now, because it is very easy, I think, to be critical of where things are at, particularly with VR right now. The resolution isn't the best, the latency isn't always good, you feel a bit sick when you're there. Ultimately, you've got to start somewhere, and I think this is where it will head. We will get to that holodeck. But there are quite a few different elements when you talk about virtual or enhanced reality. You can see in front of you there's 5 particular areas that I want to quickly speak about. Virtual reality, AR particularly, 360-degree video, which, again, from a retail background, I've been using quite a bit. There's obviously holograms as well, which is quite hardware intense and very localized. And of course, mixed reality, which is that whole magic leap, which I think we'll probably see 2017, 2018. Next slide, thanks. So virtual reality, we don't have to explain the definition of it. Really, you are transporting yourself into a different environment. At the moment, there's 2 particular big companies that are really getting involved in the hardware side from a consumption point of view. Oculus Rift, which at the moment is very much a sit down, put the headset on, and you're kind of limited to the space where you're either sitting or standing, very much localized. The HTC Vive, has anyone tried the HTC Vive? The HTC Vive is very interesting. So imagine this gray area right here. There's 4 sensors, and they can track you. So the whole thing about positional tracking is what makes VR quite interesting. As I move around this space here, it knows where I'm moving. So it's given me an environment to actually move around in. So I could be anywhere in the world and be moving within an environment. Oculus Rift, although they were the first and the pioneers, and obviously they've got the backing of Facebook, they were very much a single positional tracker, which means you had to sit pretty much right in front of that tracker. And they've just announced that the software for Oculus Rift will be expanded to have up to 4 trackers that you can now also do very similar things to what the HTC Vive does as well. Thanks. Augmented reality. Look, I was one of the first, luckily to be one of the first to try the Google Glass. Did anyone else try Google Glass out? Look, it was quite interesting, I thought, particularly when it came to things like going to points of interest and places, being able to navigate on the streets. You always felt a bit awkward using these quite clunky glasses. And I have a left eye, not a right eye, I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's quite, like I wanted to use on the left side, but the prism is only on one side, so quite fixed. And of course, the San Francisco so-called glass hole thing, didn't help either, where you could record someone simply by winking, which is creepy, first of all, obviously, but secondly, slight privacy issues there as well. But I've also put there, does anyone know what movie that's from? Okay, that deserves a wine, Pradeep. But that is, again, that was imagined back in the 80s, that there'd be this overlay. You'd be able to look at a person, and based on simply visualizing that, the AI effectively would be able to give you information about the person. And that's where, what the promise of Google Glass was supposed to be. Imagine Google Glass integrate with Facebook. You look at somebody, and you'd immediately be able to know if their birthday was today, what they did yesterday, where they're at, how many kids they've got, and you'd be able to have more engagement in conversation because simply you knew more about them right up front. But of course, the big thing that blew AR out in the last couple of weeks has been, and we've mentioned a couple of times, is, next slide please, is Pokemon. Now Pokemon's, I don't know whether many people have tracked where this at, but there was a app called Field Trip. Now, I used this app back in the day on Google Glass. Now, this was really just a landmark kind of app. You could use it on your phone, or you could use it on Google Glass. And basically, you'd walk around to points of interest. It would geographically locate you and tell you about it. And it was really there to be used for school excursions and for education. The company that made that then had another game which allowed people to fight and battle in real locations, and they managed to crowdsource additional landmarks. So then they've taken those two bits of data and they've used a licensed platform with Nintendo, and suddenly now everyone knows what AR is. So it's taken that kind of cultural phenomenon to get AR into the stratosphere. But it's quite interestingly, VR still has not got to that level yet. There's been no so-called killer app for VR, and I don't know. I still think VR itself is a middle step before we get to what Magic Leap, etc. are working on, which is that mixed reality. Next slide, thanks. So 360-degree video, I guess this is, you wouldn't call it the poor man's, but a lot of people kind of sniff at the idea that 360-degree video is actually VR. I think it is. I think it's a great way. You talk about democratization of content. It's a great way to be able to put you in another position, even though the resolution may not be the best. But I've got a sample to show you that I literally created a couple of days ago, and how easy it is to do these days. It allows you to still immerse yourself in another world, another area. You've got companies like Within, who used to be called VRSO, I think it was, and they take you to refugee camps, to protest marches. Someone, I think Chris Milk himself, said that VR is the ultimate empathy machine. Being able to place yourself in other areas and understand what other people are going through helps that educational process and take on board what other people are feeling. And that empathy, I think, is quite important when it comes to VR. Next slide, thanks. Holograms, look, holograms never came, that's that R2-D2 with, Luke, not Luke, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope kind of thing. We've never got there, again, because the intensity of the hardware required doesn't really give us the best way to be able to present that in anything other than that localized area. And a lot of it is smoke and mirrors as well. Now, particularly when you've got people using on TV, there's a lot of overlays going on there, and they're looking at a green screen, and it doesn't really work. So I think holograms aren't going to be what we actually use. I think what we really are going to be using is ... Next. Is this mixed reality. So what you see on the left-hand side there is the Microsoft HoloLens. Has anyone had a chance to use the HoloLens yet? No, neither have I. But this is really the promise of where things will get to. So VR is really you transporting yourself into a new environment. HoloLens and Magic Leap is about bringing all these other environmental factors and objects into your environment so that you are able to use the tables that you see in front of you, anything around you, to be able to place objects or people into the same room as you. That's what the promise is of mixed reality. And like I said, because VR, to me, has not yet seen that uptake, you can imagine, let's use Pokemon just for a second, but you can imagine something like Pokemon or anything that has some kind of overlay. You'd be able to walk around the streets and see Squirtles and the like. I know because my son talks about it all the time. But you'd be able to see Blastoids and Squirtles actually up in front of you without you having to use your screen as the overlay. And I think that's where some of the opportunities will lie commercially as we go forward. But that's just the general overview. So let's bring it down into more focused on the learning, which is why we're here today. Next, thanks. The VR ecosystem is massive. As you can see here, there's the content providers, there's people that distribute the actual content themselves through hardware, and there's also the software, the actual platforms themselves, and the delivery services. But I think, the stars have really aligned when it comes to that AR/VR. PCs have become way more impressive in terms of performance. Mobile phones themselves have got way higher resolutions. Now, I don't know if anyone owns an Xperia Z5 Premium. That phone has got a 4K screen. So the same screen that we sell it as a 65-inch is also available on a 5.7-inch screen. Once you put that close to your face, you're still seeing pixels, but not to the extent that you would on earlier phones. So once we start to get to phones that have, say, 16K screens, where the resolution or the DPI is really, really small, that's when I think we're going to start to see virtual reality start to really ramp up in a big way. Broadband speeds, being able to stream VR content, obviously that's a big one as well. Independent filmmakers love VR because it gives them a different way to do their storytelling. Video consumption is massive now because of YouTube and video and the rest. GoPro pivoted very, very nicely to go from sports action cameras to being able to utilize the fisheye lens and use those with custom-made rigs to be able to create stitched VR content. And then, of course, we've got people that want to seed fund these areas, and then you've got the educational platforms. All of that combined gives us a new paradigm where VR doesn't overtake or replace any of the things that we are doing that we're talking about today, which I'm listening to with great interest, but it can certainly supplement the kind of activities that we do to help hone in and bring to life some of the concepts that we do. So let's look at some of those concepts now. Thanks. All right, so that's me. So that's content consumption. So you can see that, first of all, you've got mobile devices. Now, at the moment, this is the cheapest and easiest way to deploy VR content. You look at computers and the hardware grunt that you need, it can cost at least $2,000 to $2,500 to give yourself one PC-based VR content right now. Not everyone can afford that. However, a lot of people have got mobile phones. Google Cardboard, literally $5 on eBay. $20 for a reasonable one. The one that I'm using there was from a company called Dive. It's plastic and therefore easy to use, and you can actually customize the lens to suit your eyes. The great thing is that you've got Google themselves, who have this thing called the Daydream platform, which you may have heard of. That is setting standards for mobile phone manufacturers to have specs that enable people to use VR in the right way. Thanks. Then, of course, you've got the desktop rigs. Now, I'm actually using one of these right now, and it's amazing. You need to spend a good couple of grand on your computer to get these amazing experiences. But the big difference between mobile and Oculus, so anyone here has used actual Oculus versus maybe the mobile phone? Okay, so the big difference is when you've got the mobile phone device on your face and you move your head, nothing changes. You are still in exactly the same place. And so your inner ear goes, whoa, and you get dizzy and you get nauseous, and that's a big issue. However, with the desktop bound ones, even though you are limited to your space, when you move your head around, literally you can see all of the different angles of the room move with you. So I can literally move here and look underneath that chandelier and go back again. And your brain is tricked into thinking you're actually in that space, and it's quite an amazing effect. The other difference is that on a PC-based machine, it's at 90 frames a second. So even my kids don't feel sick. If you've got a flicker on the screen, which you can see, the effect of you being immersed is ruined as well. That 90 frames a second makes a massive difference. Thank you. All right, so how do we create content? It is really easy to create 3D video content these days. A mate of mine owns Laser Corp. He sources products in, and they have just released a 3D camera that can actually fit onto your iPhone. So you usually hold the iPhone up, take a picture, and then you can put that up onto Facebook, and people can actually look around the environment that you're in. It is pretty amazing. You can literally just put it onto your phone. Samsung, they were the ones who were kind enough to lend me these units today. They've got a 360 camera. So do LG. There are a lot of people coming out with these now. These are great because they're pre-stitched. They're a great way to be able to get low-cost, kind of low-res content out that you want to be able to use. And then when you go up into the commercial area, you've got GoPro and then Nokia. I mean, that Nokia Ozo costs around $60,000. But what it gives you is this amazing quality. And that's really what you want in the day. Pre-stitch quality that keeps you immersed in that content. Thanks. And the other thing that you want to do from a content creation point of view is to be able to create the content while you're in there. So new platforms to be able to create the content while you're in that space have been designed as well. So for people that want to create content not through code, but through being able to use interface, you'll be able to sit inside the actual space that you're in and create content on the fly. Thank you. And I'm using these nonlinear editing suites myself now, where I'm able to take 360-degree content, patch them together, put different overlays and music, and then present that. Thank you. So let's look at some of the opportunities for VR to be integrated. And when I say integrate, again, they're only supplements at this stage for VR and AR. Public speaking, biology, history, space, activists. Next slide, thanks. So this is an interesting one. Samsung have started to put out quite a few different educational apps that allow you to overcome your fear of particular things. For example, public speaking. So I could be standing here and you could be throwing things at me. You could go on flames and just walk away. It's all simulated, and it's how you react to that. You are able to use that to help overcome your fear of public speaking. There's another one that I tried during the week, which was about heights. So they put you in a car, they get you to look at a cliff, and then they take you out of the car and literally float over the cliff. And it's quite confronting, especially for people that do have fear of heights. And again, it's a good way to be able to get people to be able to try and simulate these conditions without actually having to be in those physical spaces. I've tried this one out as well. Now, this is great. Now, you can see that person there, the student is actually using their hand. Has anyone used a product called Leap Motion? Has anyone heard of that? Very cool. Now, originally, these guys literally had a little device about that big, and what they did was it actually just tracked your hands. And originally, it would just simulate the hands on the screen. What I've done is, and what some apps allow you to do, is place that sensor on your Oculus, so when you put your hands in the air, like you just don't care, you're able to move around and be able to move around and interact with your environment. Now, the biggest issue there, of course, is that it's not tactile. Your glove is still not tactile, so you still don't know that you're feeling things, but it's getting there. So the instant I put my headset on, was in a space and put my hands out there, that was a pretty incredible moment. You can see that's where the promise of virtual reality is really coming. History, now this is great. So I used an app called Apollo 11. Again, it's on the Oculus Rift. I sat down in a 70s style room, watched the blast off of Apollo 11. I sat next to the dudes who were the astronauts and went up into space. So that history lesson environment where you are literally simulated to be in those environments, instead of the teacher saying, and here's a black and white picture of the moment as it was, being able to sit there with the person, I think, has a real compelling way to be able to present content that they wouldn't otherwise be able to experience. The other day, I was at Stonehenge, but I was at Stonehenge 3,000 years ago when all of the rocks were still exactly as they were. And I could actually just swipe with my hand and see the rocks as they were today. And as I turned around, I saw the rocks as they were back in the day. Very, very cool. Space exploration. Now, I think some of you here might be looking at this. This is really interesting. When I'm sure when we've all been at school, the teacher held up a basketball and then held up a tennis ball and said, this is the Earth and this is the Moon and how cool, there's a scale for you. But when you put this headset on and you can actually see physically, because it's actually 3D VR here. And you actually can see the scale, and it's hard to explain unless you're actually trying it out, but you actually see the scale of the moon compared to the Earth and then the sun. You get a sense for the size differences in reality. And I think that is really mind-blowing. And again, for children that you're trying to explain, sometimes conceptually, this can really, really ram some of those concepts home. And of course, look, this is one of the first things I actually tried with VR, was actually visit a refugee camp in Syria. It's almost, you really feel like there's an emotive thing going on there, to be able to express these things to kids and for them to get a good understanding of some of the, maybe, the social justice issues that we face. For them not to hear about it in words and numbers and statistics, but to sit there with a little kid who only gets one meal a day and has to sit in a dusty room, with only one piece of chalk for the day and understand how they live, is way more compelling than just maybe showing a film on a 2D object, because they're in control. They're able to see and experience what it's like for them as well. And I think that's I did that with my kids. I showed them that. I've got to say, after 5 minutes, they took their heads off, and I think they understood that better than they could have. I just sat down with them and did a PowerPoint effectively. So that's education, and that's probably for the younger ones out there. But what about a workplace? Look, Bingley is not in any way more forward-thinking than anyone else. It's more because I love the stuff, so I've been trying to get that stuff in there. I did a glass tour, so I pretended to be a customer with my Google glasses on, and I shook hands with the salespeople, and I pretended to drink coffee in front of the Google Glass, and that was great. And I've done something similar with a store tour with 360 degree as well, which you can also watch on the Gear VR. But what it brings, I think, is, again, that empathy machine enables us to be able to put ourselves in shoes that we otherwise may not be able to. Discrimination, sexual harassment, medical decisions on the fly, workplace tools, onboarding, all those sort of things can really be done through VR. Again, adjacent to all the other, I'm not saying we should replace it, but again, adjacent to a lot of the things that we're doing. Next slide, thanks. So this is really interesting. So imagine putting yourself in the shoes of an African-American woman in the States being harassed by an older white corporate dude. That could be a situation that many people experience in the States. So the NFL are actually developing content to address discrimination and say, this is what it's like for a woman who is of colour to be harassed by a male. And for them to be able to be in that situation, to use their hands, just like we do with the leap motion, that's a very different experience from just, again, watching a video. For you to be sitting there and to have to be, and to be that person, live in their body for that moment, I think is an incredible experience. Same thing with sexual harassment as well. At the NFL, this is on that side as well. From the view of the person that's getting harassed, to be sitting there and having that dialogue, that uncomfortable dialogue, hopefully helps that person realize the impact of what they're doing when they're having, those kind of, situations, and hopefully that helps teach and, culturally change some of the mindsets of people, which ultimately, hopefully from a learning point of view, that's what VR helps to do. Mechanical procedural training, my wife would love this. So, for example, being able to have a device on your end that allows you to show another person how to, jack up a car or fix a leaking pipe or whatever it is. You don't have to be there. It isn't just about taking the impressions of the phone. I mean, perhaps even things like CPR. You've got those sort of things as well, where if you've got the device and they're more commoditized, you might have them on and you might be able to understand exactly where you're supposed to hit them on the chest and at what rate. There's all these things that you could do through augmented reality that will help. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. In fact, actually, just last week, I noticed that Mercedes-Benz had actually produced some QR codes for early responders. So you go to a crash with Mercedes, they've got these little QR codes, they place them on the actual on the car, and then they hold up their screens, and they're able to see the best points for them to cut into the car, at the points that are most, like the jaws of life and stuff like that. So those sort of things are really, really incredible. And again, if you get the right training through VR, you'll be able to use those in real life situations. This one here on the left, this is great. So this was done, I think, by the Scottish Institute of Doctors. So you're put into a position where you've got a person come in, they kind of look a bit lifelike. They've got a neck brace, and then you have to make decisions on the fly about how to treat them. And you're given an overlay of different things that you can do. Again, this is actually on a mobile phone. And what I've found so far is that the mobile devices seem to have way more educational content than, I guess, the gamified, Asus and Asus of the world. It's actually much better. The one on the right, if anyone's got the stomach for it, you actually go and look at a 360-degree video of an actual heart operation. The idea of that is really to show how all the different people within that particular surgery are able to work together. It's a very tight space, but you're able to see how all the collaboration works to make sure that that person survives on the operating table. Very, very good. A bit bloody though. And look, again, from a efficiency, we talk about efficiencies. We're talking more about those these days. The ability to be able to join other people in one space. And I heard with interest again with Gregory Pryor talking about the Aurora school being able to have a virtual space. You might be able to create that in a virtual world as well, where you're sitting with other people with avatars. For kids, you could make it fun. They could have the Hulk avatar or whatever they want to have. But if you're having a more serious discussion, you might want to use a real life avatar. Having that conference call, that global mindset, I guess, to coin the term, is to be able to put yourself in a space where you wouldn't normally be able to collaborate. And that's, I think, where VR has got a lot of promise as well. And I think I'll talk a little bit about workplace tools and onboarding, but we'll quickly show that at the end here as well. Look, I won't go through this. Go to CommBank. There's an app online on Google. On the Google Play App Store. It gives you an idea of, as a CommBank employee, the kind of decisions that you need to be making ethically, morally, and all the rest of it when you join them as a company. And there's a really good video online that shows people's reactions to even CommBank themselves as a company, and how they treat kind of the cultural values as well. And this gives you, again, a way to immerse yourself in a corporate situation and ways that you should react. And this was great too. So Penn State University did a study saying, okay, so if we have people that are colorblind, and what kind of help would they get from someone that isn't? By putting a person within that space and letting them feel what it's like to be colorblind, they were much more likely to help out that person because they'd actually experienced what it was like for them as well. All right, so strategically, from an integration of VR or AR, obviously you've got to decide, let's not use VR as a novelty. You've really got to make sure that it's useful for you. At the moment, we're in the very early days, the infancy, if you like, of VR, but it is an exciting space to be in. Mobile is obviously the easiest way. You can use YouTube video, VRIDEO, as a platform to be able to deploy content. I'm a big proponent of 360-degree video, only because it's just easy, efficient, cheap way to deploy it. And there's obviously editing tricks to make sure that you have the right lighting without it looking like such a pre-staged, produced kind of content as well. I'm not sure if any of you saw, but Mize did an eBay app. Looks great. I know from being lead, but that app is fantastic. It's a different space, a different way of looking at eBay as well. We talk about gamification a lot, obviously, and how to apply that. VR is a great way to gamify learning as well to get the right outcomes. And like I said, VR really is that ultimate empathy machine. You're able to get across messages and concepts, particularly around social justice, discrimination, time travel, to historical situations that you wouldn't otherwise be able to. And I think because of the lowering of cost of technology and the increasing performance of products, we're able to start to utilize these to the benefit of inclusive of our learning strategies. So this is like looking forward. Look, I think we're talking today about how AI can really determine your learning space or your learning level. And I was thinking about that. For example, if you're in a VR environment and you are in a particular space, AI could be applied from a gaze point of view. So what are you looking at the most? Are you nodding when someone's talking in there? For the bot to be able to react to that and react to that in real time, that's probably where AI can really start to be included in the virtual reality space. Obviously, virtual classrooms can happen anywhere. We're going to see integration of that overlay space for AR into contact lenses. Google's already patented it. That's probably 5 years into the future. But again, with the increases in battery power and performance and processing speeds, that's not too far away. Physical use cases, once we get to wireless desktop use, and you've got those 90 frames a second with positional tracking, you're going to be in really compelling, all-encompassing environments. that will be very exciting for us to be able to apply in the learning environment. And I think haptic technology is the big one. Because we're still kind of this floating body out there, even if we're moving around, I don't know I'm actually in there because I can't feel anything. I've seen the gloves, I've seen those little kind of running treadmills that you can kind of stand on and it feels like you're walking. But that's still a few years away before we get to that stage. But again, that's where things will head. But I really think mixed reality, I think Magic Leap and what they're doing and HoloLens, I think that's really where the social aspect, that isolation-based VR, I think, is where some of the issues are. And I've gone so way over time. Sorry, Pradeep. So from a discussion point of view, these are some of the questions that I had, and maybe Pradeep can facilitate this discussion. Oh, sorry, Tim.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ritchie. That was absolutely fascinating. But we are actually almost at lunchtime, but we can stretch it a bit. So let's have some questions. I'm sure there's lots out there. And we've got a microphone somewhere? Yes, a question here.
Yeah, I'm interested in the last one because I tick the boxes of the previous ones. So if you need some help...
Can we go back a slide, sorry? This one?
No.
Before?
No, you were in the right slide.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm talking about the bullet point, the last one. Do you need assistance in creating virtual content? If the answer is yes, what's the next step?
Well, we will be having a workshop. Do you want to talk about that, Pradeep?
That is correct.
This was just a teaser to the real conference.
On 3rd November, which is part 2 of this conference series, Ritchie will be presenting, actually it's a workshop, where enabling all of us to learn how to make VR content.
And look, just to specify that a bit more, it's more video-based VR content.
Yeah, my question was like, I don't need to learn, but I want my organization to have the capability, and therefore how one can partner in creating the capability within the organization.
So, to answer your question, Global Mindset Consulting is available.
So he got the answer before you.
Very good.
Just a quick overview, like, what's the steps that you will take through?
Okay, before I steal his thunder again, the next session at 2 o'clock will also cover, VR content as part of mobile solutions. Sorry.
That's okay.
So do you have a quick 1-minute elevator speech to say how can this be handheld to any...
Look, the ecosystem, if you wanted to do things right off the bat today, all you need is a 360-degree camera, a PC, doesn't have to be a very expensive PC, a non-linear editing software like Premiere Pro, and a smartphone. You're done. That's it. Then it's the skills. We were talking before about resources. A lot of the time it's your resources. It's you or finding someone within your organization that has the willingness and then the skill, will and skill. So we've got the willingness for them to learn, or maybe they want to get into that area, and then to become a kind of a producer of that content themselves. And we talk about that concept of always learning. I've taken upon myself to learn how to actually create my own 360-degree content as well. So you need those 3 elements at least a camera, a computer to be able to edit, and then a platform to deploy. They're the 3 things you need.
Right. And you talked about Unity Coder.
Yes,
you need to hire...
Unity is terrific, yeah. Look, Unity allows you to do things like, if I am doing a store tour and I don't want it to be just, I'm just sitting in one space, but I want to go to that area over there. At the moment, you need to have coding, like as an app, to be able to then go to that area over there, within a video context, within a standard context, yes, Unity as well, but that's the trick. Being able to transport yourself while you're still within the video content to move from place to place. Unity is one way to be able to do that, because the coding allows you to navigate.
Okay. Have any more questions? I can't see. Well, that's it, Ritchie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a really interesting presentation and very informative.